What happens if they use the power of social media en masse, not buy a home for the next 6 months? And what happens through social media if that grows and all of a sudden all the first-time buyers, people who share a common issue of home unaffordability, what happens if they all say, hey, this is a good idea, let's just not buy?
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ross Kay from Ross Kay Realty Consultants. Welcome to the show, Ross.
Thanks for having me back, Jim.
Big headlines in BC. Premier Christy Clark refuses to put a tax on vacant foreign-owned homes, saying it would decrease property values and the equity in that home, although she admits by putting a tax like that on would help first-time home buyers. Is Premier Clark correct when she said if you put a tax for foreign-owned buildings up, then, of course, it's going to be bad for everybody?
Well, I guess depending what your definition of bad is, and I guess it depends on what statistical evidence that you're using before you make a statement like that. I'm assuming Ms. Clark has got some statistical information from someone in the government that has broken down the percentage of foreign buyers or the percentage of foreign owners in BC, and I'm assuming that she's found that the numbers are so low that it would really be irrelevant. Now, contrary to that, I think if she didn't get that information and someone has told her that this would be a consequence if we did start taxing foreign investors, I would think that whoever gave her that information is simply incorrect. And I think it really is going to come back to haunt her. When you're looking at Vancouver in particular, which is, in our opinion, the most volatile real estate market in the world today, to make a comment like if we were to tax foreign investors, that it would lower or make homes more affordable for first-time buyers, isn't that the most logical decision to make? If someone has told you by doing this you would lower the affordability, make homes more affordable in your home province to people who actually live and work in Vancouver, taxpayers, is that not in the best interest of those people who are going to vote for you at the next election? Why would you say that if we taxed foreign investors, people from other countries who are coming here and buying our real estate, using it for its investment potential to make a gain, which causes a speculative bubble to build and grow, why would you allow that to happen? I'm assuming that she must have some information from some expert somewhere or her staff that most of this talk about foreign buyers is a myth. My only concern is with the mayor of Vancouver and some of the people that I've spoken to who live out your way, people that I feel that have a real feel of the market. They're telling me that there are vacant homes located throughout Vancouver, even in some very expensive neighborhoods, i.e. properties well over $1.5 million, that are sitting vacant. Now, if the houses are sitting vacant, as Mayor Robertson has alluded to, then I think what you're seeing is those houses were purchased on spec, and speculative purchasing only leads to one thing, which is harm for all homeowners in a community. Because what they do is they cause a housing bubble to inflate larger than what it needs to inflate, making people go out and pay more for a home than they really need to pay. And as a consequence, when the market corrects, it corrects at a far more rapid pace and for a far larger amount, causing far more damage to the economy of the place where the correction is going to take place. And I think when you look at Vancouver prices, especially for single detached residential homes, Jim, I think anybody who would not say that there is a speculative factor in the current housing bubble that's being built in Vancouver from taking place, I think they would be simply misinformed. There is speculation in the Vancouver housing market without question. It is not parallel across the rest of British Columbia. British Columbia's housing bubble in its own is simply caused by the structural way that real estate is sold in BC. But when you get down into Vancouver itself, especially in the more expensive parts in Vancouver, I think you're seeing a speculative bubble form. And if I was the premier of your province, I would be seeking out advice from experts in the field, people who understand how a housing market operates, because that housing market can only operate one way. I would be looking for some advice, searching out some alternatives, going back and talking to some of the top economists and housing researchers in the province, asking them if these ideas are good or not. And then I would come to the population and say, look, this is going on in our province right now. We've got to put a stop to it. This is how we intend to do it. And we're going to transfer the monies that we made on this tax back into, for the sake of the argument, affordable housing. I just think that someone has to speak up to the average Vancouver, the average person from British Columbia, and someone has to step and say that it's speculation. This is not good housing fundamentals. Houses in Vancouver are not worth $2 million. We need to deal with it.
Well, the petition that brought up the issue, signed by more than 18,000 people, said the housing needs of Greater Vancouver residents are more important than the profit margins of foreign speculators. Australia, for example, has a special tax that they put on vacant homes, and a mansion was forced to be sold because of that. In Australia, foreign buyers can only buy brand new houses and apartments. They can't buy existing property.
Yeah, and I think now each country is different. Canada is different than Australia, even though the Australian housing market would be the one most closely parallel to Canada outside of certain parts of the United States. I think that they've researched this. Now, again, with politicians, you don't know if they're going to make a decision simply for political gain, which is what's confusing about Mrs. Clark's suggestions. I don't know what the political gain is there. I don't know what is the basis for that discussion. But Jim, you brought up something that has never happened in the history of real estate anywhere in the world in this comment you just brought up here about this petition. And I'm going to take this a step further. Let's talk about that young woman in British Columbia who started up a Twitter account, Don't Have a Million. And it was for a place for young people to go on, millennials to go on and talk about how are we going to deal with this housing unaffordability of housing prices here in Vancouver. And tremendous outreach she's had through this forum. Then you've got the petition signed. I heard at last count 18,000. I don't know what the actual number is, but last thing I heard it was 18,000 signatures. 18,000 signatures. So I'm going to tell you where the big change is taking place in real estate. It's going to happen someplace, whether it's Vancouver or it's someplace in the United States or someplace else in Canada. I don't know, but this is what could happen. For the sake of the argument, let's take all 18,000 people who signed that petition. Let's take the thousands of people who participated in Don't Have 1 million. Those people in particular are first-time home buyers. What happened with the power of social media today that people who live, young first-time millennials who live in Vancouver, who have been priced out of the market, who are being forced to pay $300,000-$400,000 for a tiny little condo. What happens if they use the power of social media to en masse not buy a home for the next 6 months? And what happens through social media if that grows and all of a sudden all the first-time buyers, people who share a common issue of home unaffordability, what happens if they all say, hey, this is a good idea, let's just not buy? What happens overnight? The housing bubble in Vancouver pops and housing prices start to plunge. Because without first-time buyers entering the market, those $2, $3, $4 million houses never sell. The sales chain starts with first-time buyers. The first-time buyer buys a first-time house. The owner of that first-time house goes out and buys their second home. The owner of that second home goes out and buys their third home. The owner of that third house goes out and buys their fourth home. By the time you get through 5, 6, or 7 buyers, all of a sudden you're into a $2 or $3 million property. And in Vancouver, it doesn't even take that many links in the sales chain. You're only running about 4.5. So there's 4.5 buyers further up. But everybody forget, without those first-time buyers buying those first homes in the resale market, we're not talking new homes here, we're talking the resale market only, no other homes further up the sales chain can sell. It is an impossibility because the buyers will never get the financing to own 2 homes. In other words, the person who is in a 2,000 square foot luxury home in a modern subdivision, he wants to move to a 26, or she wants to move to a 2,600 square foot house in a modern subdivision. They can't do that unless their 200,000 square foot house sells first, because they won't get the finance. That won't happen if a lower priced home doesn't sell, a lower priced home doesn't sell, and so forth. This is what's called the sales chain in real estate. What this means is, if first-time buyers stop buying, no other sales take place further up the chain. Unless, of course, it's a foreign buyer coming in from China and they have $2 million to invest in a property, then sure, they can go buy that $2 million property. But for everybody else, the 97-98% of the market that really exists today in Vancouver, no first-time buyers, no $2 million sales. Social media did not exist at any other time to the extent that it exists today. We've watched how bullying issues have been stopped by social media. We've watched how, celebrities have been totally defrocked because of social media. We have watched, I would argue, the Alberta election. A lot of that was caused by social media. For the first time in history, real estate could be impacted by social media. So all of those young first-time millennials in Vancouver who have a dream of owning a home in the next 2 years, what happens if they just decided, hey, we're going to sit back and wait 6 months? All of a sudden that housing bubble you have out there is popped, and everything Christy Clark said is irrelevant, because the people who want to get the financing on their house so they can go out and get the house renovated, they won't be able to get that financing because the appraisers know their house won't sell.
What proportion of the real estate market is driven by foreign buyers, and what proportion is driven by first-time buyers?
Okay, so foreign buyers, our research, it's less than 3%. So I know that you've got that condo building out in Vancouver where the builder came out and said 30-some% of our buyers were foreign buyers. He could be telling the truth. I don't know. What I do know is a builder has units to sell. He wants to get them sold and wants to sell them as quickly as possible. So certainly he's not going to dispel any myth that makes other people think this building is a good investment. But what I can tell you is that if it was over 3%, there would be errors in the MLS sales data that would point to those sales that I was just talking about happening. In other words, there is a $2 million sale, but there weren't the 2 or 3 other sales further down the sales chain that needed to take place to make that $2 million sale happen. And since 1982, for Canada as a whole, every single house that have been sold in Canada is tracked through the sales chain. So there's, in our opinion, there's just simply no debating, because it's a statistical impossibility. So foreign buyers, 3%. Now, when we look at first-time buyers, that ebbs and flows, and you have to take into consideration that we're not simply talking about resale homes when we talk about first-time buyers. You also have to talk about new homes. And so it's the choice that the first-time buyer has that makes a difference. What we know is in Canada today, as of April the 30th, 22.9% of all sales that have taken place in Canada so far this year were first-time buyers. We know that for sure. We know that the new home builders starts and sales have dropped off because first-time buyers are deciding to buy resale homes instead of new homes. When a first-time buyer chooses a new home, there are no other links in the sales chain that happen. The builder built a brand new house, it's vacant. The first-time buyer buys it, the sales chain is over. The builder gets the cash, he is not going to go out and buy another house. When it happens in the resale market, that first-time buyer buys their condominium or townhouse. From that condominium, from that sale, the sales chain goes forward. Those people go buy their house, those people go buy the next, and so on and so forth. So tracking first-time buyers is very important for both new home builders in the resale market, where your listeners are only really concerned about, unless they're employed in the new home sector. I mean, if they're making money from new homes, from working in that field, then they certainly need to be worried about what jobs are going to be out there. But for the average homeowner, the only thing that really matters to them is, are these first-time buyers entering the resale market? Because if they enter the resale market, they allow the resale market to continue on. This is where, when you look at Toronto, they've got about 58,000 condos coming on stream in the next 12 months. Well, if those are first-time buyers, the Toronto real estate market is over. It will collapse overnight because there will be no first-time buyers or fewer and fewer first-time buyers entering the resale market. So the sales chain will be broken, and it already is low. When we look out your way, Jim, we look at, because I know where your target market is there for your broadcast, we're looking out at Kelowna and the Okanagan, Central Okanagan District, and we see that you guys right now are sitting at only 20.9% of your sales are the result of first-time buyers, and you see what's happening to the new home market out your way because of that. So if it gets any worse, the sales chain will be broken in Kelowna, and you're going to see housing prices, instead of staying level, which is only what they've done, contrary to, we can talk about that in a minute, you're going to see selling prices decline.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay from Ross Kay Realty Consultants. Ross, you're saying through social media we could actually control real estate prices. Do you think people would have the discipline to do it?
Yeah. Now, this is just a guesstimate on our part, but I mean, we've had long discussions about this for the last 2 weeks because this is a new scenario, Jim. We can track real estate markets. We know exactly what's going to happen in the real estate market. So prices and sales volumes, we know exactly what's going to happen. We don't know what the tipping point is. We don't know what's going to cause a market to change. So in January of this year, the market across Canada, including Vancouver, all of Canada, the GTA, all of those markets contracted. What that means is that the sales started to slow down. Then the Bank of Canada reduced interest rates 0.25%, and all of a sudden in February, sales surged again. They surged in Vancouver, they surged in the GTA, but they also surged across Canada. That surge has lasted February, March, and now April. When a surge happens, it removes the number of days of demand that are left in a market. So in other words, if there's 1,000 homes that sell this month, those 1,000, the people that own those houses are going to go out and buy another 1,000 homes the next month. There's a number of days of demand that is in any real estate market. Canada right now has dropped down to 23 days of demand. So if we look at Calgary was working on 21 days of demand at the end of the 2014, which in Calgary's case, it's oversold market. So that market turned overnight. Now, it was already turning from back in July, so we knew that it was going to turn in December, irregardless of what happened with oil price. Oil prices happened, and all of a sudden, bang, it didn't only correct in December, it dropped in December, and that was the tipping point for that market. Let's say that don't have 1 million. All of the people, it continues to build popularity, and over the next month, 2 months, everybody is on board. Then somehow they get the education of what the results would be if first-time buyers were removed from the market. Because if you go and look at any studies in real estate, you're not going to find the impact first-time buyers have on a market. First-time buyers dictate the entire market. First-time buyers dictate whether a market collapses or it continues to go forward because of the sales chain. What happens if all of those people simply step back and say, we're going to wait 6 months because we're going to force housing prices down. 6 months later, they realize prices have just dropped 10%. Oh, what if we wait another 6 months? Prices drop again. It's a compounding effect, Jim, something that has never been in the market. In the market in the past, when a bubble pops, fear in the market is what has caused people to leave it. It's what causes first-time buyers to stop buying and the bubble to pop. When that fear has taken hold in the past, it's been generated through the media, the newspapers, television. The last time the Canadian housing bubble popped was 1990. There were very few of us that had computers. There was even less of us who had access to the internet, and the population as a whole didn't know what email really was in 1990, let alone Twitter, let alone Facebook, let alone social media of any sort, Instagram, whatever you want to look at. That is 2015 today. First-time buyers are the 24 to 34-year-old age category. Those people are super highly engaged online. Many of them live their lives online. Anyone who thinks that social media could not impact the housing market simply hasn't woken up.
Yes, and social media, has caused revolutions. The Arab Spring was all driven by Twitter feeds and so on because the government couldn't cut them off. Could you see the government try to censor people from starting a let's not buy real estate for 6-month campaign?
No, it would be impossible to stop. It would be impossible to stop. Like if I had any advice for that young woman who started the Don't Have a Million account, it would be enough is enough. As first-time buyers, we are not going to allow organized real estate, because I blame this on organized real estate, Jim. I put the blame squarely in organized real estate's court. A requirement to have a real estate license is to tell the truth. You cannot tell someone that their house is going to continue to increase in value without some form of house price correction taking place in British Columbia. You are simply lying to put commission dollars in your own pocket. Yes, the housing market may go on for a few more months. Who knows? Maybe it goes on for another year. But when it corrects, it's going to cause massive financial damage. So if you're selling houses without showing people how to prepare for the inevitable correction, and a correction is needed. If we don't have a correction, the Canadian housing market will die permanent. So the only way that the housing market ever sustains itself is by correcting back to the price it should be at and then moving forward again. That's just simply how it has gone since the time real estate data started being collected. So my personal opinion is that when the real estate boards release sales statistic, for the sake of the argument, the Okanagan Real Estate Board, they released sales saying how rosy sales were in April. Well, what they should have said was the average sale price of a residential home in the central Okanagan district, which includes Kelowna, has increased $400 since the beginning of the year. That's all that it's increased. And that increase is caused by a few more residential homes selling versus townhouses and mobile homes. That's what's caused it to happen. They should be telling people the market isn't super busy. They should be telling people the truth. Only 30% of all the houses that have been for sale on the market in the central Okanagan district this year have sold. Only 30% of the homes have sold. 70% of the people who tried to sell their house have been unsuccessful. And where did you read that anywhere in print? I'm assuming nowhere. That is using their own numbers, Jim, except telling the truth with the numbers. So the prices have stayed the same since the start of the year. They haven't changed. And 70% of the people who've tried to move have failed. That's what's gone on in the Okanagan. Now, when you go to Vancouver, when you hear all these crazy things about multiple bidding wars and the average selling price is getting close to $2 million for a single residential home, those are all talking points designed to keep the real estate market going without a correction. And all that's doing is causing the housing bubble to form bigger and bigger and bigger. And my question is, why are not the provincial regulators, the British Columbia Real Estate Commission, why are they not forcing the realtors to come clean with how they're releasing these real estate statistics? If they want to uphold the myth of foreign buyers, which appears in your newspapers all the time, supply one data point from organized real estate states the number of foreign buyers who bought last year. They won't give you that point. They're going to say, oh no, housing prices are going to keep going up. Don't worry, go ahead and buy today. Sooner or later, the consumer is going to find out that they've been manipulated. And if as a result of a social movement, first-time buyers say, hey, wait a second, that's not what we've been told. We were told that housing prices are going to increase. What do you mean if we don't buy a house, housing prices are going to fall? What do you mean it's on the shoulders of first-time buyers? We were led to believe that it was on the shoulders of foreign investors. We were led to believe it was on the shoulders of people who wanted to buy $4 and $5 million homes in Vancouver. What do you mean it's on the shoulders of the lowest price home in a marketplace selling. And if you're telling us all we have to do is hold off buying for 6 months to save $50, $60, $70, $80,000 on the price of our home, or 10, 15, 20% of value, I think you would see the real power of social media outside of what you mentioned, Jim.
Ross, is there a website where people could go to find out more about your company and your philosophy?
Yeah, they're welcome to go to rossk.com. We've got information that we post to the public. Our role is simply to tell real estate statistics the way that they're supposed to be released. Owning a home is a lifestyle decision that people make. It is not a financial decision. Housing prices increase with inflation. They only increase with inflation. If they increase more than that, they're going to correct sooner or later. And that's the kind of information that people get at our website, Jim.
Ross, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Thank you, and I appreciate being asked back.
You've been listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.